scrappy, and determined in the toughest section of Newark, New Jersey. One of 9 children born to an Irish immigrant family, he was blessed with a sunny disposition and a beautiful singing voice and a love for music. He also loved a good fight and was the leader of the South 12th Street Gang when he was called to the priesthood. He played ball with the boys of the parish, organized sports teams, and when war came along, he went with the boys into the Army. Father Washington began active duty on May 9, 1942. His wonderful voice, raised in song and prayer to comfort those around him, could be heard until his final moments on February the 3rd, 1943.
At this time, a candle will be lit for those courageous chaplains and the 672 brave young men who lost their lives on that fateful day. In my hand, I hold a poppy. The poppy, which grew wild on the battlefields of Flanders, became in the minds of the doughboys of World War I a symbol of sacrifice which they had endured. It had flourished among the shelled buildings and bomb-scarred landscape. Its brilliant red bloom, so much like the blood which had been shed there, became a sign of hope and renewal for those who lived and walked away. For those who would never live, those who would sacrifice their lives, it was a perpetual memorial to their bravery. Today, the poppy reminds America that millions have sacrificed their lives and health to keep our nation strong and free. Please stand and uncover while the American Legion Department of Virginia, Doug Ramos, Auxiliary President Diane Cabot, Department 17th District Auxiliary President Marion Ciccarella, and 17th District Sons of the Legion Commander Al Zoden are escorted to the front of the room by the 17th District Honor Guard to present a poppy wreath. This wreath is a token of our ever-enduring memory of our comrades. Recover. At this time, District Honor Guard member Bobby Siegfried will play taps. Hand salute. Dude. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker. I present to you 17th District Virginia Vice Commander Bob Sussin, who had the distinction of not only reading a speech with regards to the 4 chaplains on Capitol Hill, but also being a speaker at the dedication of the Jewish Chaplains Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery. Bob.
Thank you. I'm particularly honored to be here today with members of the American Legion family and with family members of one of the 4 chaplains, Rabbi Good, to recount and remember the selfless acts of heroism and self-sacrifice by 4 brave men who gave their tomorrows so we could have our todays. These are ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. I had the distinct honor and privilege on October 24th to speak at the amphitheater on the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery at the dedication of the Jewish Chaplains Memorial, in commemoration of 14 Jewish chaplains who gave their lives in the service of our great nation. Long overdue, it finally joined earlier memorials dedicated to the Protestant and Catholic chaplains. This year marks the 151st anniversary of service by rabbis in the U.S. Armed Forces. On this important day, I'd like to relate to you a story about some brave military chaplains. Again, ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. Brotherhood has nothing to do with similarities between men. Even among twins, no 2 brothers are exactly alike. These differences can create challenges to family harmony, incite jealousy, and lead to sibling rivalry. At the same time, it is these differences that make a family stronger, better rounded, and best equipped to face the challenges of life. In a time of crisis, when a family pulls together, these differences make it possible to approach a problem from different perspectives and find solutions for the common good. There is a strength in diversity, and perhaps a family should rejoice more in the differences between brothers and sisters than in the things they share in common. In November 1942, 4 young men found each other while attending chaplain school at Harvard University. They had enough in common to bond them together. At age 42, George Fox was the older brother. The youngest was 30-year-old Clark Poling, and less than 3 years separated them from the other 2, Alexander Good and John Washington. A common cause brought them together, the desire to render service to their nation during the critical years of World War II. Between the early days of May to late July, the 4 had entered military service from different areas of the country. Reverend Fox enlisted in the Army from Vermont the same day his 18-year-old son Wyatt enlisted in the Marine Corps. During World War I, though only 17 years old, Fox had convinced the Army he was actually 18 and enlisted as a medical corpsman. His courage on the battlefield earned him the Silver Star, the Cross de Guerre, and the Purple Heart. When World War II broke out, he said, "I've got to go. I know from experience what our boys are about to face. They need me." At this time, however, he didn't enlist to heal the wounds of the body. As a minister, he was joining the chaplain corps to heal the wounds of the soul. Reverend Clark Poling was from Ohio and pastoring in New York when World War II threatened world freedom. He determined to enter the Army, but not as a chaplain. "I'm not going to hide behind a church in some safe office away from the firing line," he told his father. His father, Reverend Daniel Poling, knew something of war, having served as a chaplain himself during World War I. "Don't you know that chaplains have the highest mortality rate of all? As a chaplain, you'll have the best chance in the world to be killed. You just can't carry a gun or kill anyone yourself." With your new appreciation for the role of the chaplain corps, Clark Poling accepted a commission and followed his father's footsteps. Like Clark Poling, Alexander Good had followed the steps of his father in ministry. His first years of service were in Marion, Indiana. Then he moved on to York, Pennsylvania. While studying and preparing to minister to the needs of others, Alex had joined the National Guard. 10 months before Pearl Harbor, he sought an assignment in the Navy's chaplain corps, but wasn't accepted. When war was declared, he wanted more than ever to serve the needs of those who went in harm's way to defend freedom and human dignity. He chose to do so in the United States Army as a chaplain. One looked at the spectacled, mild-mannered John P. Washington would have left one with the impression that he was not the sort of man to go to war and become a hero. His love of music and beautiful voice belied the toughness inside. One of 9 children in an Irish immigrant family, living in the toughest part of Newark, New Jersey, he had learned through sheer determination to hold his own in any fight. By the time he was a teenager, he was the leader of the South 12th Street Gang. Then God called him to ministry, returning him to the streets of New Jersey to organize sports teams, play ball with young boys who needed a strong friend to look up to, and inspire others with his beautiful hymns of praise and thanksgiving. Upon meeting at the chaplain school, the four men quickly became friends. One of Clark Polling's cousins later said, "They were all very sociable guys who seemed to have initiated interfaith activities while before the war. They hit it off well at chaplain school. Sharing their faith was not just a first-time deal for them. They were very, very close. They had prayed together a number of times before that final crisis." The observation pointed out by Clark's cousin is of note, for the men of whom he spoke were unique. Their close bond might easily have marked them as the four chaplains long before a fateful night, 3 months after they first met, when their actions would forever make the title synonymous with the names of Fox, Good, Poling, and Washington. The differences in their backgrounds and personalities could have easily outweighed their common calling to the ministry. In a world where differences have all too often created conflict and separated brothers, the four chaplains found a special kind of unity, and in that unity, they found strength. Despite their differences, they became brothers, for they had one unseen characteristic in common that overshadowed everything else. They were brothers because they all shared the same Father. We've heard the story of January 23rd, 1943, and what happened to the Dorchester. Most of the men who boarded it were young, frightened. Even if they had survived the crossing, they had nothing to look forward to, only the prospects of being thrown into the cauldron of war on foreign shores. Ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. They were men in need of a shoulder to lean on, a firm voice to encourage them, an array of hope in a world of despair. In their midst moved four men, the Army chaplains, called to put aside their own fears and uncertainties to minister to the needs of others. Perhaps Chaplain Fox thought of his own 18-year-old son serving in the Marine Corps as he walked among the young soldiers on the Dorchester, giving strength and spiritual hope to those he could. Before leaving, he had said goodbye to his wife and 7-year-old daughter, Mary Elizabeth. It was Chaplin's second war, for the war to end all wars had not. Ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. Father Washington, likewise, a Catholic priest, he was single and hadn't left behind a wife or children, but he had 8 brothers and sisters at home to fear for him and to pray for his safety. Now his closest brothers were the other 3 chaplains on the Dorchester. They leaned on each other for strength as they tried daily to met that strength out to others. Surely, as he prayed for his makeshift parish, Father Washington also whispered a prayer for Chaplain Good, Chaplain Poling, and Rabbi Good. Ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. Not only had Chaplain Fox left a son and a daughter behind, Rabbi Good left a loving wife and a 3-year-old daughter. Chaplain Poling's son, Corky, was still an infant, and within a month or two of his wife would perhaps give birth to a second child in time of war. Perhaps being single had its advantage. With so many men crammed into so small a space, all of them so much in need of the ray of hope spiritual guidance could afford them, differences ceased to be important. All of the soldiers shared the same level of misery and fear, whether Protestant, Catholic, or Jew. The title of rabbi, father, or reverend was of little consequence when a man needed a chaplain. A prayer from Rabbi Good could give strength to the Catholic soldier as quickly as a hymn from the beautiful voice of Father Washington could warm the heart of a Protestant. The Jewish soldier facing an uncertain future on foreign shores could draw on the strength of a Protestant to help him face tomorrow. The testimony of survivors tells us that the sole order and the only fragment of hope in the chaos came from these 4 chaplains, who calmly guided men to their lifeboat stations. They opened storage lockers and distributed life jackets. They coaxed men frozen with fear over the side. Of particular note, Petty Officer John Mahoney, reeling from the cold, headed back towards his cabin. "Where are you going?" a voice of calm in the sea of distress asked. "To get my gloves," Mahoney said. "Here, take these," said Rabbi Good as he handed a pair of gloves to the young officer who could have never survived the trip to his cabin and then back to safety. "I can't take those gloves," Mahoney replied. "Never mind," the rabbi responded. "I have 2 pairs. Mahoney slipped the gloves over his hands and returned to the frigid deck, never stopping to ponder until later he had reached safety that there was no way Rabbi Good would have been carrying a spare set of gloves. As that thought finally dawned on him, he came to an understanding of what was transpiring in the mind of the fearless chaplain. Somehow, Rabbi Good suspected that he would himself never leave the Dorchester alive. Likewise, Reverend Fox and Father Washington stood out within the confines of an unimaginable hell. Wounded and dying soldiers were ushered into eternity to the sounds of comforting words from men of God, more intent on the needs of others than in their own safety and survival. Somehow, by their valiant efforts, the chaplains succeeded in getting many of the soldiers out of the hold and onto the Dorchester's slippery deck. In less than a half hour, water was beginning to flow across the deck of the sinking Dorchester. Working against time, the chaplains continued to pass out life vests from lockers, and the lockers were empty, and the jackets were gone. Those still pressing in line began to realize they were doomed. There was no hope. And then, something amazing happened. Something those who were there would never forget. All 4 chaplains began taking off their own life jackets and putting them on the men. Together they sacrificed their last shred of hope for survival to ensure the survival of other men, most of them total strangers. Then time ran out. The chaplains had done all they could for those who would survive, and nothing more could be done for the remaining, including themselves. Ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. The survivors looked back from the lifeboat, saw the slanting deck of the Dorchester, the demise almost complete. Braced against the railings were the 4 chaplains, praying, singing, giving strength to others by their final valiant declaration of faith. Their arms were linked together as they braced against the railing and leaned into each other for support. Reverend Fox, Rabbi Good, Reverend Poling, and Father Washington. Said one of the survivors, "It was the finest thing I have ever seen this side of heaven." These 4 men of God had given away their only means of saving themselves in order to save others. The chaplains gathered together and led the men around them in a prayer and a hymn. They linked their arms together as the slant of the deck became severe. And just that way, with their arms linked in brotherhood and their heads bowed in prayer, they sank beneath the waves. It was a heroic act. It was not the only heroic act on the Dorchester, but it was significant. Significant because of the identity. 2 Protestants, a Catholic, and a Jew. One survivor, you've heard about his story already, Private Bednar.
Okay.
And then as this Dorchester sank, the chaplains were seen linked arms in arm, praying. And then 27 minutes after the first torpedo struck, the last vestige of the Dorchester disappeared beneath the cold North Atlantic waters. In its death throes, it reached out to calm any survivors nearby, taking with it to its grave the 4 ministers of different faiths who learned to find their strength in diversity by focusing on the Father they shared. On that day, they made their Father very proud. Fox, Good, Poling, and Washington were posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Cross and the Purple Heart. And in 1948, Congress declared February 3rd 4 Chaplains Day. Because of the Medal Honor's strict requirements of heroism under fire, Congress authorized a one-time Chaplain's Medal for Heroism on July 14, 1960. The award was presented to the chaplain's kin on January 18, 1961. And in 2006, the American Legion, at the American Legion's 88th National Convention in Salt Lake City, the National Executive Committee passed a resolution that supported awarding the Medal of Honor to Fox, Good, Poling, and Washington. Every year, American Legion posts nationwide do as we do today and remember 4 Chaplains Day with memorial services. May God bless America and the men and women in uniform, both past and present, that serve and are serving this great nation. Thank you all for taking the time today to honor the four chaplains on this, the 69th anniversary of that tragic day, whose brotherhood, selfless acts, and dedication are an inspiration to us all. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, for delivering that very inspirational address. At this time, the Honor Guard will be passing collection baskets. I'd like to remind you that all donations will be sent to the Four Chaplains Memorial in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. While the Honor Guard is passing the baskets, I'd like to introduce Mr. Chip Byers, past Sons of the American Legion Detachment Commander, to do a presentation on God Bless America and lead us in singing God Bless America as well. Chip?
Detail. Hut. Forward. Hut.
God Bless America is an American patriotic song written by Irving Berlin in 1918 and revised by him in 1938. It was made famous by Miss Kate Smith, becoming her signature song. God Bless America takes the form of a prayer for God's blessing and peace for the nation. Berlin wrote the song in 1918 while serving in the U.S. Army at Camp Upton in Yaphank, New York, but decided that it did not fit in a review called Yip Yip Yaphank, so he set it aside. The lyrics at that time included the line, "Make her victorious on land and foam, God bless America," as well as "Stand beside her and guide her to the right with the light from above." In 1938, with the rise of Hitler, Berlin, who was Jewish and a first-generation European immigrant, felt it was time to revive it as a peace song, and it was